She was a troubled mother, struggling to get by.
Here's a woman who had a child when she was a child herself.
He was a smooth operator, harboring a secret criminal past.
He was personable and charismatic, but just had a penchant in his earlier days for committing crime.
When the seasoned con artist and the single mom hooked up, it was a recipe for mayhem.
They were involved in crimes together, kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde thing.
But when another woman entered the picture, it sparked a terrifying chain of events and exposed a tale of love, lust, and betrayal that read less like Romeo and Juliet and more like natural-born killers.
She asked them to do anything. They would have done it with no regards, with no remorse.
I didn't want to see him do anything to him, so I just turned my back. All I heard was firecrackers.
It was definitely a cold, calculated murder.
You know, there's some people in this world that are just evil.
Your ass gotta know when to hold them and when to fold them, bitch.
October 26, 2010. It's 12:13 a.m., and it's an unusually peaceful night on the northwest side of Jacksonville, Florida, an area notorious for gang violence after dark.
It's an area that's high crime, part of Jacksonville.
We have so many murders, so many aggravated battery shootings.
On Myrtle Avenue, two patrol officers are on their dinner break at one of the sheriff department's designated stop stations.
Hey, have you started working on that 1045 yet?
It's an area where the police actually have a place where they can stop and have a meal or write their reports.
Moments later, the officer's meal is interrupted by a frantic banging at the door.
That's all season. Go out. Sir,
The officer hears the bang, opens the door, and there's someone standing there, bleeding from a gunshot wound.
What happened? What's your name? What's your name?
That someone is a man well known to police, a local cocaine dealer and thief named Carl Davis.
It's a little ironic that after all his brushes with the law, Carl Davis was actually running toward a police substation seeking help from the police.
But with Carl drifting in and out of consciousness, it's difficult to ascertain the true nature of his injuries. Officers radio for medical backup and try their best to determine what happened.
He was shot in the chest. It was not incapacitating. He was able to get up after getting shot and actually run to the stop station and bang on the door.
But it's not Carl's gunshot wound that shocks police. It's the identity of the shooter and the woman who winds up at the center of this tragedy.
She was a nice woman.
I think she got caught in the wrong crowd. She got caught up in the mix of something that wasn't good.
Born in Orlando, Florida, Shonda Merritt grew up in a working-class neighborhood on the north side of town. As a teenager, Shonda had a bit of a rebellious streak.
She was partying quite a bit, basically had a number of boyfriends.
By the time she was 17, Shonda was already a mother of two.
Having a child at such a young age, it's difficult for her to distinguish what healthy relationship looks like.
A single mother looking for a fresh start, Shonda moved to Jacksonville, Florida in 2007. Despite her tough situation, Shonda did everything she could to provide for her kids. With her hopes for a brighter future growing dimmer by the day, Shonda began to dabble in the only steady work she could find: crime.
She had some fraud. She also had a robbery. She has, over a dozen felony convictions.
Whenever Shonda found herself behind bars, the care of her children was often left to friends and family. But even though she continually bounced from jail to the streets and back again, Shonda longed for a stable relationship with a man who could provide for her and her kids.
Hi, Muffy, how you doing? Hey.
And at a party in 2008, Shonda met the handsome, smooth-talking Carl Davis.
Hey, my friend Carl.
Hey, Carl.
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
He's one of those people that I guess is just charming.
But it wasn't just Carl's suave demeanor that caught Shonda's eye. So did his hulking, hard-edged exterior.
Would you like something to drink?
Yeah, give me something to drink.
Okay, hold on 1 second, I got you.
He's charismatic, but then again, you have the man with the real rough at the edges. And then he can be aggressive when he needs to, and that intrigues her.
You look like you was a little thirsty, too.
Yeah, I am. Give me a toast to me.
But if Shonda thought that the smooth-talking, tough-looking Carl Davis was going to sweep her away from a life of crime, she had it all backwards.
Mr. Davis's criminal history, I remember being rather lengthy. It included a battery on a law enforcement officer, I think some domestic batteries, definitely fraud, and even some drug charges.
But by the time Shonda realized her Mr. Right was all wrong for her, it was too late.
Excuse me, ma'am, do you know where the MARTA station is around here?
And after a few weeks as a couple, the duo began committing crimes together.
Go down 2 blocks.
Right.
And you'll see the station.
I think I got it. Thanks. I appreciate that.
The level of the crimes that they committed together and the intricacy of it, I do believe was Bonnie and Clyde-ish.
Jackpot.
And like Bonnie and Clyde, every crime Carl and Shonda committed seemed to strengthen their attraction to each other.
How we doing, baby? That's what I'm talking about.
They just became very close with one another during that relationship.
But in late 2008, the starry-eyed couple's crime spree came to a screeching halt when Carl was arrested for theft at a local Walmart.
He hasn't been in and out of prison numerous times, so I guess ultimately it doesn't surprise most people.
Carl was sentenced to 18 months behind bars, but any further offenses would result in serious prison time, a fact which seemingly motivated Carl to change his criminal ways.
Anyone that is a 2-time felon is like, I messed up, my life, I need to change. You can't really fault.
I've been waiting on you. Oh, I missed you so much.
In August of 2010, Carl was released from prison. There waiting for him was Shonda.
How you been, baby?
She was truly in love with Carl. When he got out of prison, they began dating again.
At first, Carl still had every intention of keeping his nose clean. But was Shonda willing to go along with his new law-abiding lifestyle? And how long could these two ex-con lovers resist the lure of the mean streets of Northwest Jacksonville? It's a question that would spark a chilling answer and lead investigators on a high-speed chase to apprehend the criminal who pumped a shot into Carl Davis at point-blank range. After serving an 18-month prison sentence for theft, career criminal Carl Davis was determined to walk the straight and narrow. He also hoped the love of his life, fellow ex-con Shonda Merritt, would follow him down that path of righteousness.
Mr. Davis was getting his life back together. Once you're in that lifestyle, it's hard to get out.
What's going on, baby?
But soon after moving back in with her, Carl realized Shonda had other ideas.
She was basically a criminal, just couldn't get her life together, had a boyfriend. He got out of prison, wanted to change his life, and her life was still the same.
With Shonda still living a life of crime, Carl made a difficult decision.
Carl was concerned about him going back to prison. Because of them being together, he decided he wanted to start seeing other people.
Shonda didn't take the breakup well, especially once she discovered Carl had begun seeing another woman just a few weeks after they separated.
You want to come out?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Shonda continuously wanted to have contact with him, so Carl considered it to be a little bit of stalking.
She was very angry about the breakup. You know, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
The breakup was so traumatic for Shonda that shortly after learning of Carl's new girlfriend, she began experiencing chest pains and was ultimately diagnosed with a heart condition.
She was in and out of the hospital with heart issues. I was told that she would probably die within 5 years from the heart issues she has.
Don't mess up my card game. I don't play about my card game.
After hearing the news of her fatal heart condition, Shonda did an about-face of her own. Taking a page from Carl's new playbook, Shonda started straight and narrow. she began spending more time with her children, 17-year-old Marquavius and 18-year-old Deidre, as well as Deidre's boyfriend, 17-year-old Raymond Austin.
No cheating this round.
Raymond was a Christian. No, he loved going to church. He was a person everybody loved to be around.
He, at some point, meets her daughter and starts dating her and then becomes close to a degree with Ms. Merritt.
Raymond's charisma and his Christian faith seemed to have a positive impact on Shonda. And by the fall of 2010, it seemed both Shonda and her ex, Carl Davis, had made a clean break from their criminal past. Which makes the events of October 26th even more disturbing. It starts when bloody and badly injured Carl Davis knocks on the door of a police stop station in Northwest Jacksonville.
183, 183. I got one male here shot.
Officers immediately call for an ambulance. As they wait for help to arrive, they do their best to get as much information from him as they can.
Carl, look at me. What happened? Who shot you?
He pointed towards the Jeep, and that's when the officer got in the car and started heading in that direction.
She took him on a high-speed chase through residential streets in Jacksonville.
After a 7-mile pursuit, the speeding vehicle encounters a police roadblock.
They had to throw out stop sticks. Those are the types of things that when you run over them, it deflates your tires.
After hitting the stop sticks, the vehicle rolls to a halt.
She ran that car till she couldn't run it anymore.
The police ran up on her and were able to get to her before she could even open the door and placed her under arrest.
Driver, turn around, your back toward me. Driver, onto your belly.
As they take the driver into custody, police immediately recognize the suspect. It's Shonda Merritt. Arresting officers haul Shonda downtown for questioning. Meanwhile, at a nearby hospital, Carl Davis has lost consciousness, and after emergency surgery, his life hangs in the balance.
He was in the ICU. He still had a ton of tubes running out of him. He was still in pretty bad shape.
But even if Carl is unable to talk, his initial statement at the stop station made it pretty clear who had pulled the trigger.
He made some statements to the patrol officers and told them that his girlfriend had shot him.
If Carl survives, Shonda will be charged with attempted murder. If he dies, the charge will be bumped up to murder 1. But just when it seems police in Jacksonville have an open and shut case, Carl Davis comes to and makes a shocking revelation that casts a dark cloud of mystery over the entire investigation.
Like everybody else, when I saw it on the news, I was completely floored.
They realized that the shooter was still out there.
Like Bonnie and Clyde, notorious Jacksonville couple Shonda Merritt and Carl Davis had a relationship that was built upon a life of crime. But when Carl straightened up and left her high and dry, Shonda felt betrayed.
Down your knees.
Having been subdued by police following a high-speed chase, Shonda now sits handcuffed inside an interrogation room at police headquarters. She's been arrested for the attempted murder of her former lover. And with Carl fighting for his life in intensive care, Shonda may ultimately face a charge of murder in the first degree.
Carl Davis said that she was the person that shot him. She was actually fleeing from the police when she was taken into custody.
But if detectives are hoping for a quick and painless confession from Shonda, they're sorely mistaken.
I ain't shoot that bitch. Is Carl still telling people that I shot him?
She yelled at me and my partner numerous times. In fact, she would kick one of us out of the room and only want to talk to one. And then she would switch and want to talk to the other.
You get your goddamn pickle, you get your ass out of here.
Regardless of which detective she's speaking with, Shonda vehemently denies she had shot her ex-boyfriend. With the interview going nowhere, detectives reach out to Carl's friends and family, hoping to better understand Shonda's motive. Everyone they speak to tells them virtually the same story. That Shonda had never reformed her criminal ways, nor had she stopped carrying a torch for her ex.
Miss Merritt really looked at Mr. Davis like they were a couple, like they were still in a relationship. She felt very, very scorned.
Armed with a crystal clear motive, detectives turned their attention to the SUV Shonda was driving at the time she was apprehended. The hope is to find evidence linking Shonda to the shooting. As CSIs begin processing the vehicle, the investigation takes an unexpected turn.
The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office starts putting together the pieces. They realize that this is a rental car.
The rental car isn't registered in Shonda's name. Rather, it was last leased to an 83-year-old man named Charles Sukup.
He was retired. He was a family man. He was heavily involved in his church. He seemed like everybody's grandpa.
When running a background check on Charles Sukup, detectives discover a missing persons report was filed on him roughly 24 hours earlier. Around the same time, Mr. Sukup arrived at the Jacksonville airport to catch a flight to Cleveland to see his family. When the flight was canceled, Mr. Sukup apparently rented a car.
He was independent enough that he wanted to drive himself home when he wasn't able to get on that plane.
One of the first things the sheriff's office did when they found out that Mr. Sukup was missing from the airport was start to pull footage. And sure enough, they found footage of him walking through the airport and walking up to the rental car counter.
Unfortunately, that same surveillance footage did not extend to the rental car area.
They could show him at the airport. They showed him renting the car, but they didn't have any video of him leaving the airport.
Investigators are baffled. How did Shonda Merritt wind up with Mr. Sukup's vehicle?
She shot me. She shot me.
And how does this tie into the incident with Shonda's ex-boyfriend?
Why did she shoot you?
That's when they decided that they had a little bit more than just the shooting of Carl Davis that they had to be concerned with.
Back at the police station, detectives pepper Shonda with questions. Despite being apprehended in Mr. Sukup's rental vehicle, Shonda denies having anything to do with his disappearance.
Jack, who the hell, how we carjack this You gotta use a weapon and get somebody and carjack a bitch. Who we carjack?
She denied doing anything criminal. She denied knowing the victim or being involved at all.
Shonda's denial soon morphs into a verbal assault on investigators.
You stink-ass, pick-ass, pig feet.
That was the first time I'd ever heard that phrase. I guess it was a play on calling police officers pigs.
Your ass better know when to hold them and when to fold them, bitch.
At that point, Shonda's anger explodes into a full-blown rage.
She just went crazy, crazy. I mean, they had to leave the room. I mean, just out of her mind.
She's one of the most evil people I've ever interviewed in my life.
Perhaps, but with Shonda denying any involvement, Charles Sukup nowhere to be found, and Carl Davis still clinging for his life and unable to speak, investigators can't proceed with additional charges.
There wasn't much physical evidence at this point.
Detectives didn't know a whole lot about what was going on. Concrete evidence wasn't present at that point.
Desperate for answers, authorities reach out to the media.
During this investigation, we were releasing information to the media that we were looking for Mr. Sukup.
At first, the media blitz yields little new evidence, but soon...
This is Detective Zeller.
Someone will step forward with a trio of clues. Clues that prove the shooting of Carl Davis and the disappearance of Charles Sukup are connected in a way more disturbing than investigators ever imagined.
We got a call, an anonymous tip. I'm not sure we knew that it was going to be as serious as it was.
October 27, 2010. What started as a romance between two ex-cons struggling to go straight has morphed into a criminal investigation unlike any the police in Jacksonville, Florida have ever seen. It started when known felon Carl Davis claimed to have been shot by his former girlfriend and fellow ex-con, Shonda Merritt. But after arresting Shonda, investigators have learned the car she fled the scene in was a rental registered to 83-year-old Charles Sukup, who had been missing for more than 24 hours. In a combative interview with police, Shonda has denied shooting Carl and claims to know nothing about Charles Sukup's whereabouts.
How we carjack this? You gotta use a weapon and get somebody and carjack a bitch. Who we carjack?
With Shonda steadfastly denying involvement in either the Sukup disappearance or the shooting of her ex-boyfriend, police turn their attention to Mr. Sukup's rental car, hoping to unearth some clues.
While we were searching that vehicle, we found 2 .32 caliber shell casings in the car also, and 2 spent shell casings.
The shells proved to be a match for the bullet that ER surgeons removed from Carl Davis's chest. But beyond the bullets, detectives don't have much to go on. Their only hope is that someone who watched one of their many televised press briefings will respond with a lead.
This is Detective Zeller.
Just a few hours later, that hope is realized, but not in the way investigators imagined.
I've got a little bit of information on the elderly gentleman at the airport.
Someone called in and said, hey, you have some more people that you need to be looking for.
The tipster is a man named Carrie Yancey. Carrie tells police that 2 days earlier, just prior to Mr. Sukup's disappearance, a friend asked Carrie if he could give his aunt and her son a ride to the airport.
His aunt and his aunt's son came out of the home and got in my vehicle.
Get you doing everything.
2 more other guys got in the car, and I took them to the airport.
Carrie also states that his friend's aunt asked to be taken not to the airport's departure area, but to the rental car lot.
She got out of the vehicle saying that she was going to rent the car so they can go out of town in, but don't leave and make sure she get the car first.
Carrie claims he circled the airport before spotting the woman in her rental.
Hurry up and get out. Why y'all take so long?
But as Carrie's passengers exited his vehicle and stepped into the rental car, he became suspicious.
I feel something is wrong because it was an elderly man in the passenger side of the vehicle.
Come on, stop being so slow.
Police asked Carrie if he can ID his 4 passengers. Carrie doesn't know the names of all the young men, but he can confirm the identity of his friend's aunt.
One of them I identified right then. I told him it was Miss Merritt.
Carrie Yancey told the sheriff's office that he had driven Shonda Merritt to the airport.
Carrie also tells police there's someone who was not in the vehicle, but who can identify his other passengers. A young man named Montrell Davis.
Montrell is the nephew of Shonda Merritt, and he reached out to his friend Yancey and asked for him to take his aunt to the airport.
Police reach out to Montrell Davis, who identifies 2 of the 3 male passengers in Mr. Sukup's rental car. Shonda Merritt's son, Marquavius Avery, and Marquavius' friend, Corey Harrington.
Slowly but surely, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office starts putting together the pieces. They start picking up people to interview.
While they still have an unidentified 4th suspect on the loose, detectives press forward with the 2 males they have in custody. First on the list is Corey Harrington. Corey is initially uncooperative, but eventually he starts talking after a little prodding from a loved one.
I love you, Corey, but you talk to him. It just hurts me that you get tired of with people like that to get you to this point.
His grandmother said, you know, you've got to come clean. And so he eventually is extremely cooperative.
Corey tells police that once Shonda was dropped off at the airport, she stalked Charles Sukup as he made his way to his rental car.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
I work for the rental car company,
Yeah.
and I just want to take you up there so you don't get lost.
Then smooth talked her way into the driver's seat.
This is what we do as procedure.
Once behind the wheel of Mr. Sukup's vehicle, Shonda picked up Corey and the 2 other young men.
Marquavius and Corey. Of Mr. Yancey's vehicle and got into the victim's vehicle.
Although Corey cannot identify the 4th passenger, he was aware of the intentions of the group.
You said that they was following on their plan. What was their plan?
The plan was to hurt the man.
What is this?
Corey claims at that point Shonda exited the rental lot and drove to a secluded area a few miles away.
Man, I gotta do everything.
Corey couldn't bear to watch what happened next.
Listen, you need to handle your business.
I didn't want to see him do anything to him, so I just turned my back. All I heard was firecrackers.
Corey says the popping sound he heard was in fact gunfire. One member of the group had shot Mr. Sukup at point-blank range, at which point the group fled the scene in the rental vehicle, leaving Sukup's dead body behind.
We interviewed him for several hours, and he ended up telling us where Mr. Sukup's body was. And he actually took us out to where it was.
Corey's cooperation buys him little leniency. Police place him under arrest and charge him with murder.
He knew he was caught at that point, and he believed he'd be going to jail for the rest of his life.
As Corey Harrington is carted off to county jail, investigators survey the area where Charles Sukup's body was discovered. They soon stumble upon a set of tire tracks. A casting is made, and the tread is a match to that of the tires of Mr. Sukup's rental car. Between the eyewitness accounts and the physical evidence, investigators are confident they can not only link Charles Sukup's murder to the shooting of Carl Davis, they can finger Shonda Merritt as the mastermind behind both crimes.
Ms. Merritt was very angry about the breakup and wanted Mr. Davis dead. And to do that, she's in need of a car. And then, of course, they take the car and Mr. Sukup.
But just as the case file is coming together, police are thrown yet another curveball. One that calls into question the statement of perhaps the case's most important eyewitness.
We believe that Shanda had actually shot Carl because that's what he told the patrol officers, when in reality it was another person.
After a week of searching, investigators in Jacksonville, Florida have unraveled the mystery behind the murder of Charles Sukup and the attempted murder of Carl Davis. In addition to Carl's love-scorned ex-girlfriend, Shonda Merritt, they've arrested 2 other suspects, Shonda's son, Marquavius Avery, and Marquavius' friend, Corey Harrington.
To coordinate the murder of an individual with your son in the car, that definitely blew my mind.
Police believe Shonda and her accomplices murdered Charles Sukup so that Shonda could use the vehicle to hunt down and shoot her ex, Carl Davis.
Carl decided that he was going to move on with another lady that set Shonda Merritt off.
Unfortunately, for the past week, Carl Davis's critical condition has rendered him incapable of corroborating this theory. But finally, on November 1st, Davis regains consciousness, along with his ability to speak.
Carl, we know you're in a lot of pain, but can you please tell us what happened that night?
Police waste no time in questioning him, and Carl immediately drops a bombshell on the investigation.
We were able to talk to Carl Davis. He told us that it was not Shanda who had shot him.
You were shot by a male?
Yeah, young black kid.
According to Carl, it all started when his phone rang on the night of October 25th. On the line was his old flame, Shonda Merritt.
Hello? Shonda was going out of town and wanted Carl to hold some money for her.
Yeah, all right.
She needed him to pay her rent to make sure that her kids had a place to stay.
Yeah, let's do it. Where? All right.
Carl agrees to meet her near a local gas station. But no sooner had he arrived that Carl sensed something was amiss.
Hey, come over here. What's up? You act like you're afraid of me or something. What's going on?
Somebody from the backseat of the car popped up and shot at him.
One of those 2 shots knocked Carl Davis to the ground when it hit him in the chest. Carl Davis gets up, starts running for his life. The police were a little confused because Carl Davis's first words to them was that Shonda Merritt shot me.
She shot. What's your name? What's your name?
What Carl Davis meant was that Shonda Merritt set this up.
Can you describe what he looked like?
He had like a twist in his hair,
Carl Davis describes the shooter as a young black male with hair twists. If that's the case, not only is Shonda Merritt not the shooter, neither is her son Marquavius Avery or his friend Corey Harrington. The shooter had to be the unidentified third male passenger that Carrie Yancey picked up with Shonda. The only friend or known associate of Shonda's that does have hair twists is her daughter's boyfriend, Raymond Austin, a possibility that seems at odds with what investigators know about this sweet, mild-mannered young man.
I got baptized when I was 16. They did a lot of stuff, you know what I'm saying, trying to build itself.
Investigators are baffled. If Raymond Austin is indeed the shooter, what triggered this young man's transformation from choir boy to stone-cold killer?
Raymond Austin did not have any type of problem with Carl Davis.
But in speaking to Raymond's friends and family, it seems 17-year-old Raymond formed an intense bond with Shonda shortly after he began dating her daughter, Deidre.
Shonda Merritt's relationship with Raymond Austin was, in one word, bizarre.
Shonda and Ray Austin's relationship may have been inappropriate, kind of attached at the hip.
Regardless of the nature of the relationship, one thing was clear. Rather than Raymond's Christian values rubbing off on Shonda, Shonda Merritt sucked Raymond into her life of crime.
Shonda Merritt was a bad influence on Raymond Austin.
It seemed like Ray Austin would stop at nothing for Shonda. She could say jump, and he would say how high.
Circling back to both crime scenes and to the statement of eyewitness Corey Harrington, investigators are beginning to believe that Raymond Austin, not Shonda Merritt, was indeed the triggerman in both shootings. On November 2nd, 2010, just 7 days after the shooting, Raymond Austin is arrested.
Raymond Austin was apprehended by the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force and transported to the homicide office for interview.
At first, Raymond is reluctant to speak. But when detectives explain just how serious the charges against him are, he does an about-face.
Raymond Austin, during his interview, was kind of defiant. It wasn't until the detectives confronted him with the fruits of their investigation that he realized he had to admit his involvement.
Raymond starts with the harrowing description of the murder of Charles Sukup, which, according to Raymond, started when Shonda instructed him to choke Mr. Sukup to death.
At one point, we actually set the interview room up like inside of the vehicle, and he actually demonstrated on me how he choked Mr. Sukup.
My mama was sitting right here and she was looking, so I was like this on her, like trying to make sure, like it seemed like I was doing it. I wasn't trying to kill him.
Ray claims that when Shonda realized he wasn't choking Mr. Sukup with the force needed to kill him, she pulled over.
At that point, they drove back behind a old cell tower location in a very rural area.
Listen, you need to handle your business. Where's the gun? Get the gun out.
I have the gun. Come on,
if
guys.
you don't shoot him, I'm gonna shoot him. Make it happen.
So I was like, man, jump crazy. So she went back to the car and I just shot her.
Ray Austin put this off on Shonda Merritt and essentially made himself out to be a pawn, that he was just acting at her direction.
Go, 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 go.
Chandra was already in the control role. If she asked them to do anything, they would have done it with no regards, with no remorse, just to please her.
Raymond Austin's confession gives investigators the ammunition they need to charge him with first-degree murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, and armed robbery.
Raymond Austin was 17 years old at the time of the offense, but because the charges were so serious, he was in adult court.
Similar charges are filed against Shonda Merritt, and it's Shonda, the crime's alleged mastermind, that prosecutors are truly gunning for.
She just did whatever she wanted to do. If she wanted to do it, she did it. And it didn't matter if it was against the law or not.
But as Shonda's trial approaches, prosecutors can't help but wonder, will the case even make it to court?
Shonda Merritt does have a bona fide medical condition, and we were having bouts of whether she was actually going to be well enough to actually have the trial.
In Jacksonville, Florida, single mom and career criminal Shonda Merritt has been arrested for the attempted murder of her former boyfriend, Carl Davis, as well as the carjacking, kidnapping, and cold-blooded killing of 83-year-old Charles Sukup.
It does sadden me greatly to find that a poor gentleman ends up being killed for no reason other than somebody wanted his Jeep.
But in a shocking twist, investigators have determined that 17-year-old Raymond Austin, the boyfriend of Shonda's daughter, Deidre, pulled the trigger in both crimes. They've also learned that the relationship between the formerly kind-hearted Christian boy and this 34-year-old ex-con is unusual, to say the least.
When she talked about him in a way that I felt was closer than a mother should be with their daughter's boyfriend.
In order to build their cases against Shonda and Raymond, prosecutors approached the other two accomplices, Shonda's son Marquavius and his friend Corey Harrington, with a deal.
We made plea agreements with Marquavius Avery and Corey Harrington to testify against the people we believed were most responsible, being Raymond Austin and Shonda Merritt.
Both teens agree to help the prosecution, but neither walks away a free man. Marquavius Avery receives 6 years in jail, and Corey Harrington is sentenced to 7 years.
Corey Harrington, even though he was involved in the actual murder of Mr. Sukup, he, out of all of them, was so remorseful.
With the plea deals of Corey Harrington and Marquavius Avery in place, prosecutors begin gearing up for Shonda Merritt's attempted murder trial. But no sooner has the judge set a date than the state's hopes for a speedy trial are dashed.
Shonda Merritt has a documented history of heart problems, and that kept raising its head throughout the prosecution.
Preparing for trial for her was difficult. I would get myself ready, and then she would go to the hospital. So the trial kept getting continued and continued and continued.
Finally, on November 21st, 2012, the trial gets underway. Seated at the defense table, Shonda looks very little like the hyper-violent killer prosecutors believe her to be.
At the trial, she came in with an oxygen tank. She had a mask on, trying to gain sympathy from the judge and jury.
In their opening statement, prosecutors outlined Shonda's motive for orchestrating the attack on her ex.
Shonda Merritt was very upset about Carl Davis and him moving on to another woman.
She wanted him dead. She wanted him to feel the pain that she had to go through after he left her and her kids.
To bolster their argument, prosecutors introduced the bullets found in the rental car, as well as testimony about the high-speed chase Shonda led police on shortly after the shooting. But prosecutors believe the key to a guilty verdict hinges on one man's testimony: the man who had been shot, Shonda's ex-lover, Carl Davis.
She did not believe that Carl Davis would testify against her. She thought in her heart that Carl would not come into court and testify against her. So I think that was a surprise when he did.
On the stand, Carl Davis explains that when he left Shonda and started seeing another woman, Shonda became hell-bent on exacting revenge. And she manipulated her children and 17-year-old Raymond Austin into helping her.
Carl Davis's testimony was emotional, but at that point, he knew what he had to do. He testified to everything Shonda Merritt did that made her guilty.
When it's their turn, the defense puts forth an entirely different theory on the shooting. They claim Raymond Austin shot Carl Davis all on his own, as a means of eliminating his competition for Shonda's affections.
Our defense at trial was that Shonda Merritt did not shoot Carl Davis, that she did not know that Raymond Austin was going to shoot Carl Davis, that Raymond took that upon himself out of jealousy or whatever reason.
It's a compelling theory, but the jury isn't buying it. They find Shonda Merritt guilty of first-degree attempted murder. The judge gives Shonda the harshest sentence possible.
Shonda Merritt was sentenced to life in prison.
With one guilty verdict in the bag, the state pushes forward with Shonda's second trial for the kidnapping and murder of Charles Sukup. For Shonda, the stakes are even higher this time.
If ever there was a defendant who the death penalty was appropriate for, it's Shonda Merritt.
But with Shonda's health rapidly deteriorating, defense attorney Fred Ghazala asks the state to forego the death penalty in exchange for a guilty plea.
I was able to get the state to waive the death penalty once I was able to convince them that she didn't have long to live. And that was after we took the deposition of one of the doctors.
That doctor assured us that her years on this earth are numbered, and it's a small number. So rather than go through the expense of a capital trial, we agreed to allow her to plead to consecutive life sentences.
She received 3 life sentences, one for the murder, one for the kidnapping, and one for the armed robbery.
With Shonda serving 3 life sentences for the attack on Charles Sukup and 1 for the attack on Carl Davis, prosecutors turn their attention to her teenage accomplice, Raymond Austin. Tried as an adult, Raymond is found guilty of the attempted murder of Carl Davis.
Mr. Austin in that case was sentenced to 45 years in the Florida State Prison.
Raymond is also found guilty in the Charles Sukup murder.
Mr. Sukup was a true victim. He did nothing wrong. It's probably one of the saddest cases I've worked.
Raymond Austin was convicted of first-degree murder, armed carjacking, and armed kidnapping. He was sentenced to 90 years in the Florida State Prison as a juvenile.
It's a tragic ending to a bizarre tale of an embattled young woman who found comfort in the arms of a hardened criminal, but in the wake of a broken heart, found herself on a ruthless path of death and destruction in the name of love. A path that led an impressionable teenager to murder in cold blood for her affection.
I've been doing this for a long time, and Shonda Merritt was one of a kind. I've never had a client exactly like her.
Kel and Damien cheering him on. He sailed through the early rounds. Kilimanjaro. Any idiot knew that. The state President Kennedy was born in. He used a shot in the dark and guessed Florida. He was wrong, it was Texas, but he was still in the game. Then came the 50,000-pound question. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and The Enchantment? Jonathan Ross asked, was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Del froze. He looked at the options. He felt the sweat pricking at his hairline. He needed his SOS. He needed the one person he could always rely on for a bit of book learning. I'll call my brother, Rodney, Del said. The phone rang in the flat. Rodney, currently dressed as a Roman gladiator for a fantasy therapy session with Cassandra, who was dressed as a policewoman, answered the phone. Hello, Rodney, it's Jonathan Ross. Oh, piss off, Mickey Pears. Rodney snapped before realizing it actually was the BBC. The question was relayed. Rodney, the man with 2 GCEs, the man who had read The Guardian at least twice, didn't hesitate. It's Ravel. Del, 100%. You heard the man. Del shouted to the studio. It's Ravel. I know my classics. The silence that followed was agonizing. Jonathan Ross looked at Del with a pitying expression. I'm afraid it was Segovia. Rodney was wrong. Del's world collapsed. He had been so close. He had felt the gold in his hands. He walked off the stage, a broken man, leaving his family and his dignity behind in the studio. Chapter 6, The Ravel Twist. Hours later, Del wandered into the flat. His shoulders slumped. Raquel and the others were already there, the atmosphere thick with disappointment. I'm sorry, Raquel, Del mumbled. I could have sworn it was Ravel. And so could I, Cassandra sighed, still adjusting her police hat. Well, you're both dipsticks then, aren't you? Del snapped, his old fire returning for a brief moment. Everyone knows Ravel makes shoes. It was a trick question. He sank into the sofa, defeated. But then the phone rang. Hello. Yes, this is Derek Trotter. What? No. Del's face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions. Shock, disbelief, and finally, a grin that could light up the whole of South London. He says there's been a mistake. It was Ravel. The researchers got it wrong. I've won the 50 grand, and I'm going back on the show for the 100. The room erupted. Cheers, hugs, and the sound of Rodney falling over his own gladiator sandals. "We're back," Del shouted, punching the air. "Who do you people think we are? We're the Trotters. This time next year, we'll be millionaires." In the distance, the jukebox from the Nag's Head seemed to play a celebratory tune. The suitcase was in the van, the dreams were back on the table, and in the heart of Peckham, the legend of the Trotters continued. As Del always said, bonjour. Only fools and horses, the Trotter Chronicles. A novelization of If They Could See Us Now. Chapter 1, The Echoes of a Suitcase. The yellow Reliant Regal Supervan 3 rattled through the streets of Peckham, a three-wheeled relic of a bygone era that refused to die. Inside, the air smelled of stale cigars, knockoff perfume, and the faint, lingering hope of a man who believed that this time next year we'll be millionaires, even though technically they had already been millionaires and lost it all. Derek Delboy Trotter gripped the steering wheel with fingers adorned with rings that caught the pale London sun. He was humming a tune, a rhythmic cadence that mirrored the ups and downs of his life. It was a song about suitcases and mysteries, about the changing seasons and the tides of the sea. It was the anthem of the street trader, the philosophy of a man who lived by his wits and his hooky gear. "I'll fetch the suitcase from the van," Del muttered to himself, his voice a gravelly baritone. "'Cause if you are the bestest, but you don't ask questions, then, brother, I'm your man." Beside him, Rodney, his younger brother, the one with the GCEs and the sensitive disposition, looked like he was about to have a nervous breakdown. Rodney was staring out the window at the familiar gray blocks of Nelson Mandela House, his lanky frame cramped in the passenger seat. "What's up with you, Rodney?" Del asked, glancing at his brother. "You look like a dog that's just realized the cat's got the house keys." "I'm a bit nervous, that's all," Rodney replied, his voice thin. "I mean, this bloke we're going to see, this Justin, he's a documentary filmmaker. Del, a professional. He's not going to be asking me anything about my private life, is he? My marriage? My problems?" Del gave a dismissive wave of a gold-clad hand. "Of course he ain't. We're not that private, are we? I mean, everyone in the Nag's Head knows your business. He's not going to want to know about you and Cassandra's little hiccups in the bedroom department." Rodney stiffened. "What hiccups? Me and Cassandra haven't got any problems. And I told you that in confidence, Del, strict confidence." All right, keep your hair on," Del chuckled. "I'm not going to be telling him about jiffins and things, and I won't tell him what Cassandra wears, either, unless he asks, of course, for the sake of the narrative." They arrived at the office building, a glass and steel monolith that screamed success in a way the Trotters no longer did. They were here to tell their story, the rise, the fall, and the inevitable restructuring. Chapter 2, The Race on the Adder. The office of Justin, the filmmaker, was sterile, minimalist, and terrifyingly modern. Justin himself sat behind a desk that probably cost more than those entire inventory of digital watches. "Sorry to keep you waiting," Justin said, not looking particularly sorry. "It's been a particularly busy morning. Now, I've got all the basic details about your business career, etc. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you, how you started, how you became so successful, but more importantly, your lives and your race on the adder." Dell leaned forward, his eyes lighting up. "Oh, no. Laboratory Garney," he replied, mangling the French with his signature confidence. To Dell, French was not a language. It was a spice you sprinkled on a conversation to make it taste expensive. Justin blinked, momentarily stunned by the linguistic assault. "Right. So, in your own words and in your own time." Dell settled back, his mind drifting back through the years. The memories were vivid: the smell of the ocean, the sound of champagne corks popping, the weight of a thick wallet in his breast pocket. "Well, where shall I start, Justin?" Dell began, his voice taking on a storyteller's lilt. "Up to a few years ago, we were just very ordinary people living, well, very ordinary lives, weren't we, Rodney? Weren't we?" Rodney nodded gloomily. And then Dell continued, his eyes sparkling. "As you know, one day I discovered an historic and almost priceless artifact, the Harrison watch. We didn't know what to do with it at first. We thought about donating it to the British Museum as a national treasure, a gift to the people." Rodney cleared his throat. "And then we decided to flog it." "Exactly." Dell beamed. "And before you know it, Rodgers and me have come into an eye on £6.5 million. £6.5 million. Justin, it was cushy. It was more than cushy. It was magnifique." Dell described the aftermath with the flourish of a man describing a religious experience. They had divvied the dosh, ensuring Uncle Albert got a nice little drink. They had donated to charity enormously, of course, or at least, that was Dell's version of events. But eventually, they had to think about the future. "We sought out this city stockbroker," Dell said, his expression turning serious. "A man of vision. He advised us to invest in a new and vibrant venture, a Central American market. It was attracting massive funds from all over the world. We were making more money than the Royal Mint." Chapter 3, The High Life and the Deep Fall. For a while, the Trotters had lived a dream. Dell described the luxury villas in Barbados, the private jets, and the constant flow of cocktails with little umbrellas. They had taken the whole family, Raquel, his significant other, Rodney, Cassandra, and the young Damien. Even the memories of Damien's antics were tinted with gold. People were complaining at the hotel. Del chuckled. Dominic, the manager, said Damien had. Well, he'd relieved himself in the swimming pool. Cassandra was all upset, but I told her all little boys do that, don't they? Rodney groaned. Yes, Del, but not from the top of the 4-meter diving board. The laughter in the office died away as Del's face fell. The memory of the crash was like a cold wind blowing through the room. And then, just as everything seemed to be going so well, something terrible happened, Del whispered. The Central American market hadn't just dipped, it had evaporated. Negotiations collapsed, the currency became worthless, and the investments vanished into the jungle air. They had been wiped out. The credit cards were withdrawn while they were still in their luxury hotel. Derek is, if nothing else, a very creative businessman, Rodney added, his voice dry. He came up with a solution to our dilemma. We ran. We literally ran for the airport. The news hit the UK like a thunderbolt. Their business associates vanished. The phones stopped ringing. They were cast into a financial wilderness. Their old friends from Peckham were gutted for them mostly because many of them, like Mike Fisher from the Nag's Head, had invested their own life savings into Del's sure thing. Poor old Mike, Del sighed. He remortgaged the pub. He's in prison now, awaiting trial for embezzlement. The fraud squad claims he tried to recoup his losses by dipping into the brewery's till. Never was a man more innocent. He confessed to everything, Del, Rodney pointed out. He was under duress, Del insisted. Chapter 4, The Court of No Miracles. The scene shifted in Del's mind to the sterile hallways of the bankruptcy court. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of cheap floor wax and desperation. Denzel, Trigger, Boyke, and Sid were there the Peckhamfer, acting as character witnesses. Denzel was wearing the marble out, pacing up and down. Del recalled. He was terrified. He'd never been a character witness before. I told him he had nothing to worry about, Del said. But Trigger was a different story. He told me he was going to tell the judge he heard voices. He wasn't even on trial, Rodney exclaimed. He was just there to say you were an honest man. The court case had been a disaster. The Trotters had lost everything. Their company-owned properties, the villas, the estate with the peacocks were gone. All that remained was their old flat in Nelson Mandela House, which Del had fortunately kept in his own name. It just goes to show how our fortunes altered, Del mused to Justin. One minute we're drinking Crystal on a yacht. The next we're back in Peckham, arguing over who used the last of the milk. The tension in the flat had been unbearable. The rows were constant. Del and Rodney blamed each other for the crash. Raquel and Cassandra were caught in the crossfire. I wasted our birthright. Rodney had shouted during one particularly heated argument. You hired a helicopter to fly to Nice to collect magazines. Del, a helicopter. I'm a big man. I've got broad shoulders. Del had replied with his usual bravado. The buck stops here, even though it was your fault. Rodney, how was it my fault? You're the director of administration. You organized the Christmas parties. They were about as exciting as a Buddhist's hen night. Chapter 5. A final farewell to the ancient mariner. In the midst of their financial ruin, a greater tragedy struck. Uncle Albert, the man of 1,000 wartime stories. The man who had been sunk in more ships than most people had seen passed away. The funeral was a somber affair, but in true Trotter fashion, it was laced with absurdity. Del and Rodney arrived at the cemetery, their faces etched with grief, only to realize they were at the wrong service. We saw a coffin, we saw a group of mourners, we assumed it was Albert, Del explained, his voice trembling slightly. I even gave a speech about his wartime sagas. I told them how he'd won the war single-handedly. The deceased's name was Bunny Warren, Rodney said softly. He was in the RAF. We were standing there crying over a complete stranger while Albert was being buried 3 plots over. The loss of Albert felt like the end of an era. He was the last link to their grandfather, a constant presence in the flat, snoring on the sofa or boring them with tales of the Battle of the Baltic. I wish we'd taken him to Barbados. Del sighed. He never had a passport, though the ancient mariner, who'd been round the world more times than a Russian satellite, and he couldn't get past Heathrow. Chapter 6. The New Management. Back at the flat, the reality of bankruptcy set in. The Inland Revenue was demanding $48,750 for pounds and for pence, plus interest. They'll take the roof, Raquel had cried. They'll take everything. But Del Boy wasn't done. He was a trader. He could sell rice to the Chinese. He could sell sand to a desert dweller. He just needed a loophole. I've been disqualified from running a company, Del told Rodney as they sat in the kitchen, surrounded by piles of unpaid bills. But you haven't. You've got a clean record. You're young, enthusiastic, full of ideas. Rodney looked at him suspiciously. What are you saying? Del, I'm saying that Trotter's Independent Traders needs a new managing director. Someone with vision. Someone like you. And so, the power dynamic shifted. Rodney became the boss. He sat in the executive chair, which was just the armchair with a cushion added, and Del became the director of sales. I'm going to be in charge of sales, purchasing, and finance, Rodney announced to the family, trying to sound authoritative. Congratulations, Rodney, Raquel had said, though her eyes were full of doubt. Del had immediately set to work, consulting for his brother. He even tried to convince Rodney that they could make 100 pounds. 0 by appearing on a new game show called Gold Rush. I can do it, Rodney. I've worked it all out, Dell insisted. I'm a natural for the telly. Chapter 7, The Gold Rush Climax. The studio of Gold Rush was a neon-lit arena of high stakes and higher tension. Jonathan Ross, with his characteristic wit and sharp suits, presided over the chaos. Dell sat on the contestants' podium, sweating under the hot lights. He had navigated the early rounds with a mix of luck and sheer bravado. He'd answered a question about mountains in Africa by guessing Kilimanjaro because any idiot knows that, and Fuji makes cameras. Now, he was facing the 50,000 pounds question. The lights turned gold. The audience held their breath. For 50,000 pounds, Derek Jonathan Ross said, his voice echoing in the silent studio, which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and The Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Dole's mind went blank. He thought of Ravel. He thought of shoes. He thought of Segovia. He thought of nothing. I'm going to have to use my SOS. Jonathan, Dell said, his voice cracking. I'm calling my brother, Rodney. The phone rang in the flat at Nelson Mandela House. Rodney, who had been trying to engage in fantasy therapy with Cassandra dressing up as a gladiator while she wore a policewoman's uniform, picked up the phone, thinking it was Mickey Pierce playing a prank. Piss off, Mickey, Rodney shouted into the receiver. Rodney, it's Jonathan Ross. Dole's voice screamed in the background. When Rodney finally realized it was real, he froze. He had seconds to answer. It's Ravel, Dell. I'm 100% sure. It's Ravel. Dell turned back to Jonathan Ross, a triumphant smile on his face. It's Ravel, Jonathan. My brother has to GCEs. He knows his classics. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek, that was the wrong answer. Jonathan Ross said softly. It was Segovia. Dole's world collapsed. He had lost the money. He had lost the chance to save the family. He kicked the podium in a fit of rage, sending it toppling over. Chapter 8, The Twist of Fate. Back at the flat, the atmosphere was funereal. Dell sat in the dark, staring at the floor. Rodney was riddled with guilt, unable to look his brother in the eye. I was so certain, Rodney whispered. I could have sworn it was Ravel. Ravel makes shoes, you plonker. Dell snapped. Everyone knows that. But then the phone rang. It was the producer of Gold Rush. There had been a mistake. A massive, televised, embarrassing mistake. It was Ravel, Dell shouted, jumping up from his chair. He says I can take the 50,000 quid and come back on the show. The flat erupted in cheers. Raquel hugged Dell. Cassandra kissed Rodney. For a moment, they were back on top. The Trotters were back in business. What did I tell you? Rotters. Dell beamed, his gold rings glinting in the dim light of the flat. this time next year, we'll be millionaires." Rodney smiled, a genuine, weary smile. "Yeah, Del, this time next year." As the credits of their lives rolled in their minds, the yellow van continued its journey through the streets of Peckham. The suitcase was still in the back. The mysteries were still unsolved. But as long as they had each other and a bit of hooky luck, the world was still cushy. Epilogue: The Soul of Peckham. In the Nag's Head later that night, the Peckham raised their glasses. The news of Dill's win had spread like wildfire. "He's a survivor, Ardell," Sid said, wiping a glass. "Yeah," Trigger nodded. "I always knew he was a genius, even when he was crying over Bunny Warren." And in the corner, a ghost of an old man with a white beard and a sailor's cap seemed to chuckle. The Trotters were bankrupt, they were broke, and they were the laughing stock of the borough, but they were home. And in Peckham, that was worth more than $6.5 million. Author's note: this novelization explores the themes of family loyalty, the cyclical nature of success, and the indomitable spirit of the London working class. While the Trotters may lose their money, they never lose their raison d'etre. The Peckham Redemption, a Trotter Odyssey. Prologue: The Mystery of the Seasons. The yellow three-wheeled van, a Reliant Regal that had seen more repairs than the Great Wall of China, rattled through the streets of Peckham. To the casual observer, it was a motorized eyesore. To Derek Delboy Trotter, it was a chariot of destiny. "I'll fetch the suitcase from the van," Del muttered to himself, his voice a gravelly symphony of optimism and Benson and Hedges. He climbed out, adjusting his camel hair coat. "'Cause if you are the bestest, but you don't ask questions, then, brother, I'm your man." It was a mantra he lived by. The origins of his merchandise were often shrouded in a mystery deeper than the tides of the sea. He watched the changing seasons of Peckham from the damp gray of winter to the dusty gray of summer, and wondered why he was the only one driving himself berserk. Why did only fools and horses work? The question hung in the air like the scent of cheap cigars and fried bread. Chapter 1: The Inquisition. The office of Justin, a man whose suit probably cost more than the Trotters' combined liquid assets, was offensively clean. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes that dared to enter such a prestigious space. Rodney Trotter sat on the edge of a designer chair, looking like a man awaiting a firing squad. He adjusted his tie for the 14th time. "What's up with you, Rodney?" Del whispered, leaning back with a practiced air of nonchalance that fooled absolutely no one. "I'm a bit nervous, that's all," Rodney hissed back. "I mean, this bloke we're going to see, this Justin, he's not going to be asking me anything about my private life, that sort of thing, is he?" Del waved a ring-encrusted hand dismissively. "Of course he ain't. We're not that private, are we?" He's not going to want to know about you and Cassandra's little problems. Rodney's head snapped toward his brother. What problems? Me and Cassandra haven't got any problems. That's not what you said to me the other night, Dell countered, a predatory glint in his eye. All right, so there's been one or two minor hiccups in the bedroom department, Rodney conceded, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. But they're personal, and I told you in confidence. Dell smirked. All right, keep your hair on. I'm not going to be telling him about jiffins and things. And I won't tell him what Cassandra wears either. Before Rodney could articulate his growing dread, the door swung open. Justin entered, looking busy and important, clutching a leather-bound folder. Sorry to keep you waiting, Justin said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. It's been a particularly busy morning. Now, I've got all the basic details about your business career, etc. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you. How you started, how you became so successful, but more importantly, your lives and your raison d'etre. Dell nodded sagely, though the French phrase passed through his mind like a ghost through a wall. Oh, no, Laboratory Garney, I understand perfectly. Justin gestured to them both. So, in your own words and in your own time. Dell leaned forward, the storyteller taking the stage. Well, where shall I start? Justin. Well, up to a few years ago. We were just very ordinary people living, well, very ordinary lives. Weren't we, Rodney? Rodney nodded slowly, his mind drifting back to the days of one-bedroom flats and suitcase trading. And then Dell continued, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. One day I discovered an historic and almost priceless artifact, an Harrison watch. At first, we didn't know what to do with it. To begin with, we thought about donating it to the British Museum as a national treasure. Rodney cleared his throat. Yeah, and then we decided to flog it. Exactly, Dell beamed. So, before you know it, Rodders and me have come into an eye on £6.5 million. The memory of the money felt like a warm bath. They had been kings. They had divvied the dosh, made sure Uncle Albert had a nice little drink, and even donated to charity. But money, as Dell was about to explain, was a fickle mistress. Chapter 2, The Central American Mirage. We had to start thinking about our future, Dell explained to Justin, who was scribbling notes furiously. So, we sought out this city stockbroker, and he advised us to invest in a new and vibrant venture. It was a Central American market. It was attracting massive funds from all over the world. We were making more money than a royal mint. In Dell's mind, the memories played out like a glossy travel brochure. He saw himself and Raquel, Rodney and Cassandra, and young Damien living the high life. He remembered the luxury hotels, the palm trees, and the constant thrum of Ricky Martin's Livin' La Vida Loca playing in the background. But even then, there were signs of the coming storm. He remembered Damien the Littlegit weeing into a hotel swimming pool from the top of a 4-meter diving board. He remembered the hollow luxury of a life without a hustle. And then, Dill's face darkened, just as everything seemed to be going so well. Something terrible happened. Negotiations between the Central American countries collapsed. Rodney interjected, the voice of cold reality. The market was wiped out. Nicked the lot. We'd even paid for the hotel on a credit card, which had now been withdrawn. The fall had been faster than the rise. The news hit the UK via the internet before they could even pack their bags. Suddenly, their business associates weren't returning calls. They were cast into a financial wilderness. Fortunately, Dell said, trying to regain his dignity, we come from a strong community. Our friends in Peckham were as gutted as us. Take Mike Fisher, the landlord of the Nag's Head. He invested his life savings, remortgaged the pub. And will Mr. Fisher be giving evidence? Justin asked. No, Dell sighed. He's in prison, awaiting trial. The fraud squad claims he tried to recoup his losses by embezzling the brewery. Never was a man more innocent. He confessed to everything. Dell, Rodney added helpfully. Chapter 3, The Halls of Justice. The courtroom was a cold, cavernous space that smelled of old paper and failed ambitions. Outside, the Peckham crew, Trigger, Denzel, and Sid paced the corridors like a collection of nervous suspects. For God's sake, Denzel, sit down, Albert snapped. You're wearing the marble out. I can't, Albert, can I? Denzel replied, his face a mask of anxiety. I've never been a character witness before. And you think we have? Sid grunted. I'm worried, Denzel continued. I think Dill's made a terrible mistake, adding us for his character witnesses. It's like inviting the Manson family to dinner. Trigger, staring blankly at a fire extinguisher, nodded. I'm going to tell them I hear voices. No, Trig, you're not on trial, Sid groaned. You're a character witness. I know, Trigger said simply, but I hear voices. Inside the courtroom, the legal machinery ground onward. The Trotters had lost everything. Their company-owned properties were gone. Dill's estate with the peacocks was a memory. Rodney's riverside flat was a dream. Due to my foresight, Dell told the judge some years previously I had bought another property, so at least we had somewhere to live. It's called our old flat, Rodney muttered. Nelson Mandela House. The return to the high-rise was a bitter pill. Every day brought more rows, more bad news. They thought things couldn't get worse. Chapter 4, A Farewell to the Old Sea Dog. The funeral was supposed to be a solemn occasion, a final anchors away for Uncle Albert, the man who had survived the Battle of the Baltic and countless other wartime sagas that had bored his nephews to tears. Best leave it till the hearse arrives. Dell whispered to Rodney as they stood outside the chapel. They met a woman named Marion who had cleaned for Albert. Lovely old man, she said, went on a bit. I feel bad, Dell admitted, looking at the casket, leaving him here on his own while we were off globe-trotting. He didn't even have a passport. Good job Hitler didn't find that out. They entered the chapel, joined by a man named Roland, who claimed to be related to Albert's niece. I suppose we'll all miss him in our way, Roland said, though his tone was less than reverent. I'll tell you one thing we won't miss, though. All those bloody wartime sagas. Those eyes narrowed. Actually, Roland, we used to love hearing about his past. God, he did go on, though. Roland persisted. Never bloody stopped. Dell stepped closer to the man. You've got to remember that a lot of blokes lost their lives for our liberty, just so that 50 years later, prats like you would have the freedom to knock them. All right? Take it easy, Dell, Rodney cautioned. No, I'm serious, Dell said, his voice rising. I think you and I ought to go outside and have a more detailed chat. The tension was broken by the arrival of the hearse. But as the pallbearers moved past, Damien pointed a finger. Is that a Spitfire, Dad? Dell looked at the floral arrangements. Oh, we're at the wrong funeral. Chapter 5, The Bankruptcy and the Broom. Back in the flat, the reality of the court's decision finally settled. The court declared me bankrupt, Dell announced to Raquel and Cassandra. Does that mean you're going to prison? Damien asked, almost hopefully. No, Dell snapped. The Inland Revenue give you a year to pay off your debt. Then they come in and take all your goods, anything of value. So it won't affect us. Then Rodney quipped. We have got something of value, Raquel said softly. This flat, our home. Dell looked around the cramped living room. I suppose I could always look for a job. Trigger said they're recruiting down at his depot. Road sweeping. The thought of Del Boy the man who once sold 1,000 genuine Russian watches sweeping the gutters of Peckham was too much for Raquel to bear. I was talking about Rodney, she said. Me? Rodney stammered. Can you honestly see me pushing a broom around? It's all right, Dell said, a new plan already forming in his hyperactive mind. They give training. Dell knew he couldn't run a company while bankrupt, but Rodney was clean. Trotter's Independent Traders is no more, Dell said, performing a mournful sigh. It's Capet, dead as the emu. Unless what? Rodney asked. Unless there was someone out there. Someone young and enthusiastic. Someone full of ideas. Someone like, well, you, Rodney. Me? Rodney blinked. Legally, there's nothing to stop me taking over. Exactly. Dell beamed. Rodney Trotter, managing director. It's got a ring to it, don't it? Chapter 6, Gold Rush. The neon lights of the television studio were blinding. Dell stood on the stage of Gold Rush, facing Jonathan Ross and the judgmental gaze of the British public. He had lied about his pastimes, claiming an interest in 16th century Italian Renaissance art and managed to fumble his way through the preliminary rounds. Rodney, Dell whispered into the phone, using his SOS option. "I need your help. 50,000 pounds on the line." "Who's this?" "Mickey Pierce." Rodney's voice crackled through the speaker. "It's Jonathan Ross." "Rodney," the host shouted, "we need an answer. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and The Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo?" Rodney, sitting in the flat in his pajamas, felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Ravel, 100%, Dell." Dell turned back to Jonathan Ross, a confident smirk on his face. "I'll go with that. It's Ravel." The silence in the studio was deafening. "Derek," Jonathan said softly, "that was the wrong answer. It was Segovia." The world seemed to collapse. Dell was frozen out. He returned home to a flat filled with disappointment. "I was certain," Rodney moaned. "I could have sworn it was Ravel." "Ravel makes shoes, you dipstick," Dell exploded, though he himself hadn't known the answer 10 minutes prior. The phone rang. Raquel answered it. "Dell, it's the producer of Gold Rush." Dell took the phone, his heart hammering. "Hello. Yes. What?" His face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions. "He said there's been a mistake. It was Ravel. I've won the 50 grand. The room erupted. Cheers, hugs, and the clinking of glasses. But then a familiar sound drifted through the receiver. The distinct clink of a jukebox from the Nag's Head. "Bloody Mickey Pierce," Dell screamed, slamming the phone down. But as he looked at his family, Rodney, Raquel, Cassandra, and even the little Damien, he realized that while the money was gone, the hustle remained. He adjusted his gold chain and looked at Rodney. "Don't worry, Rodders," Dell said, the old fire returning to his eyes. "This time next year, we'll be millionaires." Fools and Fortunes, the Peckham Reversal. Chapter 1, The Inquisition of Derek Trotter. The sky over London hung low and gray, the color of a cheap tin ashtray, weeping a fine drizzle that clung to the windows of the bankruptcy tribunal. Inside, the air was stifling, smelling faintly of old paper, floor wax, and the cold sweat of ruined men. Rodney Trotter sat in the stiff-backed waiting room chair, his long limbs folded awkwardly, his knees bouncing with a nervous, rhythmic energy. He looked like a heron that had accidentally wandered into a boardroom. Beside him sat his older brother, Derek, Del Boy to his friends. Sir to the maitre d's of Mayfair, at least, until recently. Del adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke camel hair coat, a lingering relic of a fortune that had vanished like smoke in a hurricane. He radiated an aura of forced invincibility, a sharp contrast to Rodney's visible unraveling. I'll fetch the suitcase from the van, Dell muttered, half to himself, glancing at the frosted glass door of the inner office. He hummed a tuneless melody, projecting a bravado that fooled neither of them. Rodney wiped his damp palms on his trousers. "What's up with you, Rodney?" Dell asked, finally noticing his brother's pallor. "I'm a bit nervous, that's all," Rodney confessed, his voice a low, reedy whisper. "I mean, this bloke we're going to see, this Justin, he's not going to be asking me anything about my private life, that sort of thing, is he?" Dell scoffed, flashing a gold sovereign ring that the bailiffs had somehow missed. "Of course he ain't. We're not that private. He's not going to want to know about you and Cassandra's little problems," Dell added, a teasing glint in his eye. Rodney stiffened, his head snapping toward his brother. "No, no. Good, 'cause otherwise I would. Wait, what problems? Me and Cassandra haven't got any problems." Dell leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that echoed loudly in the quiet room. "That's not what you said to me the other night." "All right," Rodney hissed, his face flushing a sudden, violent crimson. "So there's been one or two minor hiccups in the bedroom department, but they're personal, and I told you in confidence, under the strictest brotherly privilege. Dell." All right, keep your hair on," Dell placated, adjusting his silk tie. "I'm not going to be telling him about chiffons and things, and I won't tell him what Cassandra wears, either." Before Rodney could formulate a sufficiently scathing reply, the frosted glass door creaked open. A thin, pallid man with a clipboard and spectacles that seemed to magnify the utter lack of joy in his eyes stepped out. "Justin." "Sorry to keep you waiting," Justin said, his voice entirely devoid of sorrow. "It's been a particularly busy morning. Please, come in." They followed Justin into an office that felt smaller than a prison cell. It was lined with filing cabinets containing the shattered dreams of 1,000 small businessmen. Justin sat behind a heavy oak desk, gesturing for the brothers to take the two meager chairs opposite him. Now, Justin began, placing his fingers together. "I've got all the basic details about your business career, etc. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you. How you started, how you became so successful, but more importantly, your lives and your raison d'etre." Dell leaned back, a wide, nostalgic smile spreading across his face. Entirely inappropriate for a man facing complete financial ruin. "Ah, laboratoire garni," Dell replied smoothly, misusing the French phrase with total conviction. Justin blinked slowly. "So, in your own words and in your own time." "Well, where shall I start, Justin?" Dell said, resting his hands on his belly. "Up to a few years ago, we were just very ordinary people living, well, very ordinary lives, weren't we, Roddards?" Rodney offered a bleak nod. Ordinary was an understatement. They had been market traders scraping by on selling faulty VCers and luminous paint. And then Dole's eyes shone with the memory of the golden days. As you know, one day I discovered a historic and almost priceless artifact, that old watch. The memory hung in the air at the Christie's auction, the hammer falling. The realization that they were instantly, unfathomably wealthy, over 6 million pounds. The leap from the grimy streets of Peckham to the stratosphere of the global elite. At first, we didn't know what to do with it. Rodney chimed in, finding his voice. To begin with, we thought about donating it to the British Museum as a national treasure. Yeah, Del chuckled. And then we decided to flog it. So, before you know it, Rodders and me have come in on an eye-watering £6.5 million. Well, after we divvied the dosh up, making sure our Uncle Albert got a nice little drink to keep him happy down on the coast. We thought of others first. We donated to charity. Enormously, of course. Justin wrote something down. His pen scratched against the paper like a rat clawing at wood. Eventually, we had to start thinking about our future. Del continued,